Hey guys, Tyler Jones here with a new segment we're going to call Speak Up Fridays, where we take a couple of minutes and talk about something that's going on in the world or our state or our community. And for the first one, I want to talk about a really important piece of legislation that was just filed in the South Carolina Senate by Minority Leader Nikki Setzler and Senator Mia McLeod that gets rid of partisan gerrymandering in South Carolina once and for all. Now, for those of you who don't know, partisan gerrymandering is when politicians at the state house get to draw district lines for state house, state senate, congressional, and manipulate them in order to give themselves or their political party some sort of numeric advantage. A perfect example of this is our congressional districts in South Carolina. While Democrats make up anywhere from 40 to 47% of the statewide vote, they only control 1 out of 7 congressional districts, just 14%. So if Democrats make up 40% of the state, even in a bad year, why do they only control 14% of the congressional districts? Easy. Partisan gerrymandering. Republicans in the legislature draw these lines in a way that Democrats can only win 1 congressional district at all. Well, how do they do it? Well, they pack as many Democrats into one huge Democratic district so that they can have lots more Republican districts around it. If you look at Jim Clyburn's 6th congressional district, it encompasses almost half the entire state. It's also almost 60% African American. It strategically includes the black parts of certain counties while excluding the white parts. In Charleston County, Congressman Clyburn represents the predominantly African American areas, North Charleston, the Upper Peninsula, but his district does not include the predominantly white areas in Charleston, like Mount Pleasant and the Lower Peninsula. This is intentional. He represents parts of Beaufort County, more African American areas like Yamasee, but his district mysteriously cuts off right before you get to predominantly white Hilton Head Island. Again, very intentional. Same with Columbia. Clyburn represents the majority black precincts in Columbia, while the whiter precincts go to Joe Wilson. You see, this practice occurs not just at the congressional level, but at the state house level too. In the last election, 78% of incumbents in the South Carolina legislature had no opposition. Now, is that because they're doing such a great job? Of course not. It's because they drew their own district lines to make it virtually impossible to lose in a general election. But under partisan gerrymandering, they can lose, just not in a general election. You see, when you face no threat from the opposition party, you no longer have to worry about representing all of your constituents. If you're a Republican and you've drawn your lines to make it impossible for a Democrat to beat you, the only thing you have to worry about is a primary challenge. The result of this is Republicans running to the far right to appease the only voters they've got to worry about, Republican primary voters. And who votes in Republican primaries? Not Democrats, not independents, not moderates, and not most Republicans. It's only the most conservative, activist Republicans in that district who are the ones voting in the Republican primaries. Those people, who may make up 10% of their district, become the all-powerful electorate. Those are the people that Republican legislators now have to appease. Now, how do they avoid a primary challenge? Easy. Be sufficiently conservative to the most conservative voters in their district, which in South Carolina is very conservative. And if they're not sufficiently conservative, primary voters will find someone who is. If my 9 years working at the State House taught me anything, it's that nothing scares a Republican politician more than the thought of a primary challenge to their right. This creates a Republican majority in South Carolina made up of the most conservative voices in our state. Now, on the flip side, Democrats aren't completely innocent in this either. A lot of them go to great lengths to draw their district in a way that makes re-election much easier. If a Republican colleague asks them to take a few more African American voters in their district in order to make both of them safer in the next election, odds are they're going to say yes. And then the same thing happens on the Democratic side. They no longer have to worry about Republican voters, only Democratic primary voters, who are the most liberal in their district. And if those Democratic legislators aren't sufficiently liberal, Democratic primary voters will find someone who is. The result of all of this is a legislature and a Congress made up of the most conservative voices and the most liberal voices in our entire nation. And we somehow expect them to work together, when in reality, working with the opposition party will almost ensure a primary challenge for anybody who dares to cross the aisle. Partisan gerrymandering is intended to help the majority party, meaning in South Carolina, it helps Republicans. But in Massachusetts, it helps Democrats. Gerrymandering has caused more dysfunction in our country in recent years than ever before. And if we expect our leaders to be able to tackle any of the challenges facing our country and our state, we've got to put a stop to this undemocratic practice. Many states have taken steps to end partisan gerrymandering by putting the redistricting process into the hands of an independent commission who is tasked with drawing lines fairly and without partisan consideration. Now, redistricting reform is not intended to swing a legislature or a Congress from Republican to Democrat or Democrat to Republican. It's intended to bring in all voices rather than just the small percentage of people who vote in Republican or Democratic primaries. It's intended to make our general elections more competitive so that incumbents and candidates have to cater to every single voter and not just the most conservative or the most liberal. That means Republicans will have to start going into black churches, and Democrats will have to start going to NASCAR races. Republicans will have to go on MSNBC, and Democrats will have to go on Fox. We'll have to talk to each other again. And that's what a democracy is all about. Everybody's voice should matter. And that's why I was really excited to see Senator Nikki Setzler and Senator Mia McLeod's bill to end partisan gerrymandering in South Carolina once and for all. Senate Bill 341 would put a referendum on the ballot asking voters to implement a 9-person independent reapportionment commission chosen by a 3-member panel appointed by the state inspector general. Members of this commission can't be politicians, former partisan or legislative staff, or big money donors. Now, we have major challenges in South Carolina that must be tackled. Roads, education, the state pension, ethics. But I believe that ending partisan gerrymandering is not only the most important issue facing our state right now, but it would help solve all those other issues. And it's time we do something about it. And that starts with passing Senate Bill 341.